Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of the training challenge. So today's day, the focus is on materials. So yesterday we started with you focusing on the design because that's really important. It's important to know what you want to make so that when you contact the factory, you can explain to them. And today the focus is on materials. And the reason the focus is on materials and yesterday is because one of the most common problems in the industry, like the most people who contact me and when they speak to other experts from the fashion industry, and one of the biggest challenges when someone wants to launch a brand is finding a factory. But finding a factory is easy. You can Google it, there's plenty of factories. Finding the right factory is difficult. And finding the right factory is difficult because very often you haven't got the clarity of what you're looking for. So I'm going to go back just again to the dating analogy and just to explain to you what happens when startups, creative entrepreneurs who want to launch their own brand, the mistake that they do. So imagine you want to date and you go to a dating website. There's like so many, you decide to sign up to one and there's like so much choice. And if you just want to date someone, you can date anyone, right? But if you want to find the one, then you really need to know what you're looking for. And you really need to be able to, if you want to speak the same language, you have to say, I want someone who speaks English, for example, or Spanish or whatever it is. Otherwise, he might be the one, but if you can't communicate, it doesn't really, matter. So the same thing happens in fashion. People want to find the right factory. First of all, they say, I can't find a factory. And then there's choice. People tell them where to go and find factories, or they're looking for, can you refer me to a factory? It's pointless asking someone to refer you to a factory because any factory will not do. The right one, you're looking for the right one. So in order for you to find the right one, you really need to know what you're looking for. And starting with your design, that's step one, that's the easy step. Thinking through the details of what you want, your product to look like, because as yesterday we covered, there's a difference between a t-shirt and a t-shirt, right? Or any other product. But then when you contact a manufacturer, they need to know more, and you should also be asking more questions if the goal of the exercise is to find the right one. And materials is an extremely important component of that knowledge that you have to gather and that you have to own that knowledge. So I very much stand for extreme ownership, which is actually a terminology that is used in the army. But the idea here is that you really need to understand that if you want to build any kind of business, especially in fashion, where it seems easy, but actually it's not, where it's not regulated, where it's so expensive, there's so much smoke and mirrors, etc. So you really need to understand that you cannot delegate something that you don't know what you want. So you need to own everything to begin with, and when you know what you want and how you want it, then you can delegate, because then you can brief people. So part of that process is knowing what materials you want. And there's 3 main reasons why you really need to know what materials you'll be using. So number 1, it makes you think even more about your product, because you might have the most wonderful design, but if you, let's say, for example, you want some kind of evening dress that is, you imagine it, I want it to be really light and, flowy and etc. And then you're using fabric that, like organza, for example, which is quite stiff. Well, I mean, it would be light, but it's not going to be flowy, right? There's countless examples. I can't think of any now, but there's countless examples. So when you have an idea, the materials is what really facilitates the execution of that idea. So the two have to talk to each other in order for you to get this dream idea that you have of your design. And knowing that, obviously, is important to get the end result. Second reason why you need to know your materials is because by knowing, sorry, I had to refer to my notes. By knowing your material, you would be then able to find the right manufacturer. What does that mean? So not all manufacturers are made the same, just like not any man will do, or not any woman will do for you to date, right? You won't have special requirements. And the same goes for manufacturing. The right manufacturer has to make the product the way you want it, to the quality that you want. they have to be able, they have to have the skilled labor, the machinists, etc., to make that product the way you want it. And also they have to meet your price requirement, right? And minimum order quantity as well. Those two kind of go hand in hand, and we'll cover that in the next few days. But so if you know what you want to make, great, tick. If you know what material you want, great, that's a step in the right direction. Now, the next thing is that you need to know, does your manufacturer have the right skill set? Now, a manufacturer, just because they have a sewing machine doesn't make them the right one for you. They really need to know how to work with your material, execute your design, and have the machinery for it, right? So only by knowing your materials would you be able then to ask the right questions of a factory that says, yeah, I can make your design. Because if you go, and especially in times of economic downturn like right now, where there's constantly in the press how so many factories are closing down, they're struggling. So many of the large retailers haven't paid their factories. And like I said yesterday, these guys, they don't make a lot of money, and they make the money from production. So at the moment, it's really hard for manufacturers. Everyone is, either going bust or they're scrambling for work. They're adapting. Yesterday, I was talking to someone who is making uniforms and going and making caps, things that they wouldn't normally do, but they have to survive. They know it's a short-term pain they have to go through. So if you were to right now call a factory and say, hey, I was wondering if you can make my design, I'm thinking of launching my brand, etc., the answer is yes, they'll do it for you. But you don't want just anyone working on your product. You want the right manufacturers, as we just said. So the first step is to share with them your design, what you have in mind. But then in order for you to ascertain whether they have the skill set, whether they can make it for you, you need to be able to describe what material you're going to be using and make sure that they can work with that material. Because a factory that knows how to make wovens, so just shirts, I'll get to the questions in a second, let's say shirts and dresses made out of woven materials, etc., will not be the best factory to make activewear. They just need different machinery. They can make it, because how hard is it, to make a simple pair of leggings or, a swimsuit, right? 2 triangles and a string. But it's not that. They need to know how to work with the material. There's stretch, with wovens, there isn't stretch. With this is stretch. In fact, activewear materials use jersey and it's called knitted. It's actually referred to as a knitted material. So you need to find a factory that knows how to handle knitted materials, who has the right machinery, because they require different machinery. If you are making something with a leather trim, you need to find a factory that knows how to handle the leather and be able to trim your material. And they need to have a special tool, for, a special foot to adapt their sewing machine. If you're doing a bridal wear, for example, you need someone who knows how to work with delicate materials, but also especially with bridal, you want a factory that's really clean, right? Because you're handling white materials. So everything that you want to do most probably will require one factory with particular skill set over another, and you just need to find these guys. So any factory will not do. You need to find the right one for you, and to find the right one for you, you need to start with your materials. You need to make sure that they can work with your material. And in times like this, as I mentioned, in economic downturn, when everyone can do everything and everyone is a jack of all trades, because the name of the game is survival, one way of finding out, you have to ask many questions to get to the core of the information you're looking for. So you can say, for example, do you work with these materials? And they'll say, yes, of course. Okay, but give me examples of what other clients do you work with? Do you make the most money or livelihood as a business from working with these materials? Another question that I like asking is what is it that you don't work with? And that's a tough one. They never want to admit that there's something that they don't work with. But eventually, especially when you know a little bit about fabrics, eventually by being also sometimes with a bit of a joke, you can get to the information. So you can say, well, if you work with everything, can you, make me something in leather? Or, can you make me something, out of chainmail, for example, things like this. You can even get silly and bring a bit of sense of humor with the manufacturer, but the idea is that you dig deep and you find out what is it that they don't work. I have one factory that I work with, for example, in India, and he's brilliant. He does everything, but it's taken me a while to find out that he does not deal with silk. He works with anything that's cotton. He can work with things that have stretch. He can work with wovens, but he just does not go down, with working with silks and with more delicate materials. But it took me a while to find this out. So you have to be clever as how you approach a manufacturer and how you gently, without rubbing them the wrong way, you ask questions so that you ascertain that they're the right maker for you. Because if they're not the right maker for you, you're just going to waste time and you're going to waste money on waiting and making a sample that will come wrong. And when you start asking questions, why is it this like that, why is it wrong, etc., it would then transpire, I don't have this machinery, or we don't work with these materials. They might ask you to give them another go, give us another chance, but you can give them as many chances as you want. If they don't know how to handle and work with material, if they're not an expert, you're never going to get the results. So that is why knowing your materials is very important. And then the third point of knowing your materials is that the sheet that I gave you, most of you have just now put a little information, which is great. It's just the beginning. But ultimately, what this sheet should be is more like a document, like a document documenting your materials. Because those of you who want to go into business and you're creating products, you want to document and capture all the information of your materials for this particular design that you're working on, collection, whatever it is, because you will constantly be referring to it, especially when it comes to ordering for sampling. So imagine you went to a fair, or from somewhere you found a swatch. So the swatch, first of all, will come from a bolt of fabric and from a manufacturer. So you need to capture who is the manufacturer, who made this fabric. If I want to order again, where do I go? Who do I contact? How much is it? How much is it for sampling? How much is it for production? What's it made of? What is the composition? Because you're going to need that information later on for labels. If I want to order more, what do I say? Do I say the red fabric, that I picked up from you last year? I mean, these companies, they deal with so many people. You need to be precise. You need to say, I'm looking for such and such article in such and such colorway. This is my reference for the material. This is the color reference, etc., etc. If you are ordering and working with silks or cottons, aside from the fact that they have multiple names and different qualities, they start coming in different grams. So if you want something that is a little bit lighter than something else, you need to then ask the supplier to give you all the information. And when you start working with more materials, imagine you can't contain everything in your head. Everything has to be documented. So this sheet, you can create your own version. This was just something little just to get you going and to make you understand the logic of this. So the idea is that you need to capture all of that information, because you will constantly be referring over and over and over to it. And especially also when it comes down to costing your product, that's really important information. So that is why this is important. So what you've done at the beginning, at the moment, just listing your information is great. But if those of you who are planning to go post this training and challenge into, take your design into business more seriously, I advise you to continue working on this sheet and just, keep asking questions and just keep on adding that information there, because you will be needing it. And especially also if at some point you get someone to help you, if you launch your brand and you grow it and you start hiring people to help you, or interns or whatever it is, you need to have a database where you collect all of this information and it's easy for you to refer. Another side note of why capturing this information is also really important is that those of you who end up building a successful business, and quite a few of you in the group, have big visions, and I, sincerely hope that they would come to fruition. But very often when you're a brand, you might have a success story with the product, and then you kind of, go off and do other things. And then you decide to bring it back because it was a bestseller. Or if you're changing a factory, as you start growing or for other reasons, you might change factories, and you need to be able to give them that information. You need to be able to access that information, and in years to come, bring back that design. Or when you're moving to a different factory, you just give them the sheets and say, there you go. This is all the information you need. This is my sketch. These are my patterns. Here is my sample. Here is the information sheet with all the fabrics. Off you go, right? They order the materials and present you with a sample. So that is why this is all important. So this was step 2 of day 2, step 2 of the process, which is really crucial and important. Any questions? If you have any questions, pop them in now. Let me see. I have a manufacturer insisting on 100% upfront. The MOQ is low, but I'm dubious about putting 100% upfront. Do you mean by money? I mean, I can answer you, but I really want to encourage you to think and to use your common sense. What I see in fashion a lot is that people stop using their common sense. So I really encourage you to use common sense. Would you pay for an operation in advance? Would you? I mean, there's lots of things that you would not pay upfront everything when you don't know them. So I would encourage you to think and use your common sense and act accordingly. So if you don't know these guys, if you don't have enough evidence that they can do what you are asking them to do, if they haven't sampled and tried and proven therefore that they can do what they say they can do and what you want, why would you pay them in advance? It is standard in the industry to prepay part because it's a commitment. Like I said to you yesterday, there's horror stories on both sides. There's plenty of horror stories from manufacturers who did not, they really liked someone, they didn't take any deposit because of some sub story from the designer side. They did everything and then the designer disappeared. Or I have even, witnessed myself where the designer turns around and says, oh, actually, I don't have the money. I was hoping to raise some finance, blah, blah, blah. So there will be some exchange of money, but not the full 100%, unless, like I mentioned before, you've got all the checks. Do you have any tips on choosing fabrics while stores are closed? I really want to be able to see and feel them. If you contact shops, they should be able to maybe send you swatches. So yeah, there's plenty of companies that are operating online and they can send you swatches, especially now. Or otherwise, if you find a manufacturer, you can, when you speak to manufacturers and they're the right one and they work with the materials that you want, they might be able to send you some swatches. So that's one way. Yeah, it is a little bit of a problem, this, but I think hopefully we are starting to open up. I heard back from the manufacturer, now we own the pattern. Yes, you will. Yeah. I have, do you have any tips on choosing? Okay, we did this. Yes, Manu answered you this. Let's see. My issue is the color. The fabric is good, but how do I make exactly the color I want? Because in the color is a little bit off. It changes everything. Well, that means that you want to go down the bespoke route, and you may have to make your specific color to your color requirement, but then you're looking at bigger minimum order quantities. So this is a little bit of a tricky one, but also even when you go and make your own color, from batch to batch, from production order to production order of the bulk material, there will be some variation. It's standard to have a small color variation or tolerance. So you just have to, as much as possible, take precautions to make sure that you can work, that you minimize the possibilities for the color to go wrong, but also on the other side that there's ways that you can prevent if there's a variation. What can you do on the other side that it doesn't completely disrupt your design? So it's you have to tweak your design and really think how to do that. Can you get your fabric match dyed? Yeah, you can. There's fabric dyers that you can find. Some factories might be able to facilitate that, but usually there's minimum order quantities involved. You're looking at bulk material, because imagine if it's a small quantity, it would cost you more, and it would become probably unworkable unless you're a couture house and price is not an issue. If you wanted to come into price, then you're looking at a bulk order, a lot of material, because usually the machines they use, for this kind of dye matching, it's industrial big machines. So it's can you get good books on fabric information? I don't, but I will drop in the group and in the chat later some links. There's quite a lot of blogs. So there is a book that I recommend on seams, and we'll cover this tomorrow. But in terms of fabrics, there's a lot available online. So you can start there just by researching, but I don't from the top of my head have a book to recommend. Fabric Savvy. Oh, there you go. Even I would check it out. Fabric Savvy. That's great. But the best way to learn about fabrics is Fashionary. Yes, Fashionary has really good books, but they're a little bit on the surface. But I guess you can start with the surface and dig deeper. Another great way when life resumes and goes back to normal, and just to visit trade fairs and just talk to suppliers. And the more you interact with them, the more you will learn. Also your manufacturers, I have learned so much about materials I had never learned about or worked with. I have zero fear to start a new project with material I don't know, because then I'm looking for the people who will know how to make it, and then I'll just ask them questions, and I would be upfront that I don't know that much, but I would show them that I'm willing to really listen to them and to learn fast, and through them, and I would learn. And again, there's so much information online. You can gather information and then sense check it with your maker. This is what I heard. You think this would work, And when you show them willingness that to learn and that you're doing research, you're not just turning up there and waiting for them to spoon feed you. They would be so much more open. Then it becomes collaboration. Then it's not one-sided, and that's all manufacturers. Manufacturers thrive on collaborating with the designers. So show them that you're willing to learn and to know more, and for them to teach you in a little way, without it sounding like you're trying to get a degree of your manufacturer and pay less and all the rest of it. Okay, so this is it. So if you haven't started your sheet, try to put more to be more detailed. And if you have already done your worksheet for today, go back and see what other information you can add, or go back and on the worksheet, what exactly does you mean by trims? Trims means buttons, if you have any lace, anything like that. Yes, but so if you have done your sheet, go back and see what other information you can add to it, and perhaps make a list of questions that every time you go and source material, trims, whatever it is, that you ask all of these questions so that you don't forget. So when I go to a trade fair, for example, I have, I always sit down and outline. I mean, I know them, but in case I forget, I still write them all down so that I don't forget to ask what is the price, what is the delivery time frame, is it stock or not stock, all of these little things that you want to know. Because think about, I need the fabric now to make my sample, and if I like my sample, I need the fabric later on for production. So what are all these questions that you would have relating to these scenarios? And if you want, you can start a thread and you can drop lots of questions below in the thread, and I can give you feedback and stuff, so we can compile between you quite a detailed list of questions. Can you get digital software that does color mixing? You got to know. Oh, no idea. Just be careful, because the digital, as good as they are, digital mixing, colorways, etc., they're only as accurate as anything can be on paper. The minute you put material into the equation, the outcome is not going to be exactly the same. Plus colors are really affected by, the materials. I said the fiber. So different fibers take the dye in different ways. So, and also, especially when you're using natural fibers, for example, with leather, I work a lot with leather. I can have the same recipe, nothing can change. And I'm telling you this from experience, because I've actually been down that road so many times. Nothing will change in the recipe. Nothing will change in the machinery. Same people, same everything. And then from one batch, from one skin to another, there will be color variance. And as once I was explained by a lovely Italian person in a tannery, the cows that the leather comes from, one year there's more rain, another year the grass is different, and it all affects the skin. So as funny and frustrating as it was at the time for me, it's the truth. When you're dealing with natural material, there's so many different aspects that influence the structure of the fiber and how it's going to then behave when it's being dyed or worked with, etc. So the same goes for cotton, silks, etc. And then what was I going to tell you? And then the second thing is light. So when you look at the color and it's flat on your phone or it's a recipe, again, that I've learned the hard way. How I see the color here in London and how someone in Italy or in another country sees it is completely different. So that is why in the industry there's light boxes, and I'm not suggesting that you should go and buy a light box, but just be aware that when you receive a swatch and it says, but I asked you for this and it's not exactly the same match, it would never be 100% exactly the same, most probably, but also what is really close to them in their conditions and their light would be completely different probably for you. So you just have to learn how to work with a little bit of variance, because that's life. And this is it. Will the Facebook group remain a place once the course is over? It will be, I should mention that, I should put a post. It would be remain open for another week. After that, it will be archived. The information will be there until maybe the next time I start the challenge, and then I would have to wipe it clean and start again. But it would be there for a while. So that's it for today. If you want, start a thread with the questions. If you want, post your revised worksheets with a bit more information, or just do it for yourself. But that's it for today, and I'll see you tomorrow. If you have any more questions, just pop them again in the thread. And if not, we'll continue tomorrow with the next level of complexity I will, bring to you. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in the group.